Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to All Access. It's our second episode of the official Tier 1 podcast. Yes, it's just a podcast about Tier 1 with us. Hi, again, I'm Marco, the marketing guy for Tier 1, and with me again is our CEO, Trike,
Hello.
Aika from Business Development, and Pao. You know him. You know Pao.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
So, yeah, last episode, our first episode, we talked about the importance of timing and how the landscape of the industry at certain points will really shape the trajectory of your choices. So, on that subject of time, we're gonna try to travel back through time to a much simpler time. Or I don't know if it's a simpler time, but it's a time. It's 2017. The eSports landscape in 2017 as experienced by us versus how we see it today in the year of our Lord 2020, which is also not really a simple time. It's a very complicated time.
When you put it that way, yeah, this is the darkest timeline. So that time was all
Full of
rainbows
hopes and
unicorns.
dreams.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So what were you hoping
Full
and
of
dreaming
hopes
for?
and
Yeah, in 2017, what were you hoping and dreaming for?
I think I can start the story. So for me, I was just looking at like the some of the memorable moments in 2017 in Google, just for me to like put myself back in that year. And in January 20, Donald Trump is sworn as the 45th president of the United States. I think that's one of the most monumental thing that happened in 2017. I'm not gonna scroll down anymore, but I think for for esports, from what I remember at least, it was a time where most pro players were getting bigger salaries compared to what they were getting before. But definitely, it's not on the level of what they are getting today, especially in 2019. You look at shoutcasters, and shoutcasters were mostly freelancers. I remember some shoutcasters from League of Legends, especially like Aika. They were mostly just paid every time they shoutcast an event. It wasn't really a full time thing. I remember some Dota 2 casters were also like paid per coverage. Some of them were paid like allowances of like 5,000, 7,000 pesos. So it was really a different time for people who are working in esports. And on the other side, like for the back end teams, I remember there weren't a lot of opportunities for esports careers to pursue, especially if you're a graphic designer or a video editor or maybe like someone in finance. If you graduated in a university, esports wouldn't even be in your sight. Like you wouldn't even be choosing esports. Probably you'll choose esports only if you don't want to earn anything, or maybe if you want to do it for fun, or maybe
Right.
for passion
Such a
or something.
person who doesn't
Yeah, I
want
know.
to earn anything.
Yeah, I'm just being like factual. I think that,
Yeah,
that
it's
those were
the
like the
age
outlooks
old.
back then, right?
Yeah, it's the age-old sentiment, right? If I wanted to be rich, I wouldn't be in esports. I'd do something else.
Yeah, it was more about passion. It was more about like I'm gonna do this for
Uh-huh.
fun, but there was never really like a monetary gain, or at least some sort of like future where you can earn a lot in esports, especially if we're talking about back end and shoutcasting and streaming. So
Uh-huh.
I feel like those weren't available before. And I think to cut the long story short, in general, esports back then were more of like a hobby, at least in a region, compared to what was happening globally. Because globally, there were players who were paid with high salaries already. There are opportunities here and
Uh-huh.
there with Fnatic and like some game publishers, and like some streamers were being paid with subscriptions from Twitch, from what I remember, right? But in general, like I feel like the opportunities were very, very little compared to what it is today. How about you guys? Like, Pao, what do you think?
I think so. The way I remember 2017 was, for some reason, my view of 2017, at least from my perspective, was that everyone who worked in esports was either one of two things: a player or a content creator. Like there wasn't even a lot of emphasis on being a team owner or maybe the team manager, but even then, it's not really something that was, a respectable thing to be or to take up as a profession. So it was really mostly, it's either you're playing the games professionally, competing professionally, or you were making content about the esports titles. You were either a streamer or up in YouTube, or maybe a shoutcaster, like the people that we ended up working with a lot across our career. So that was, I think, what I would call, I want to borrow a term that I regularly hear from like people who are fans of wrestling, but that was the passion era. Like I think I agree with Treg. Like, that was sort of the passion era where people were not really thinking about the long term sort of career options that were laid out in front of them. Unlike what you have today, where you have people who were probably players before, they've transitioned to being coaches now, or moving into other games or other careers within the organizations that they represented. Or you have right now in 2020, you have casters who used to be part of broadcasts. They're now taking up positions in companies, which is exactly essentially what Trek did, right? But that wasn't common back then, because back then everyone was just parang trying to make sure that they earned paycheck to paycheck, gig to gig. So that was, I think, that period of time, at least from my eyes, because we knew a lot of people who would come up to us, and not even people who were already in the industry. We would get people who would ask, "Oh, hey, how do I get into this industry?" Right? The people weren't looking for like, if you owned a team in 2017, you weren't exactly looking for like, "Oh, I need a chef," because or probably couldn't afford it yet. You weren't exactly looking for like an accountant, a salesperson. All of these were being done by the people who started those esports companies. They weren't really giving them out to other people to experience. So I think it was that. I think 2017 was sort of informal. I think that's the best. Like, to me, everything was informal, and people were starting to figure out what we needed to do in order to make, in order to turn it into an actual industry. I think that's how it was, at least for the Philippines. But how about you guys? How about for League of Legends?
Oh yeah, coming from I could go next because she was more heavily into the content creation side back in 2017. So from that lens, where does that factor in?
Well, so my view, I guess, is a little different. It's not as grim. In fact, I would say that for the way I saw it, and kind of the pulse I had of how 2017 was, is it was the time when we were essentially riding the high from 2016, like as an industry. A lot of big things, as we mentioned in our last podcast, happened in 2016. And there was growing interest from major companies, such as Twitch, to enter the Philippine market from that time. And really, it kind of felt like we were finally going to, as an industry, follow in the footsteps of the great Western esports industry, right? So you have, for example, in League of Legends, from my experience, that was the time when things were also really starting to look up, because teams finally had better compensation. Yes,
I remember Imperium, right?
Yeah. They finally. So this was the time when teams were paid better, paid more regularly. Organizations were no longer. There were still the older organizations, but you also had a lot of younger organizations and young leadership that wanted to follow the better practices, I guess you could say, that really fought for their teams and not so much their profit margins. And then, of course, so for teams, you have that. And, we, from back then, we kind of saw, okay, so if this keeps going up and the industry keeps on investing in the teams, then our skill level can go up. And maybe one day we can reach the level of how it is in Dota 2 for Philippine teams. And maybe we can command the same compensation packages and things like that. So it was an optimistic time. Now on the shoutcaster end, it was a little bit mixed. So you had so how it was back then, where there were in League of Legends in-house shoutcasters, and of course you had freelancers. So like you mentioned, compensation wasn't great. I will say it was quite. Usually, in a day of shoutcasting, you would end up negative just trying to get to your shoutcasting gig, paying for your food and everything, and then getting back home. You would usually end up in a negative balance. So it was really like also very much driven by passion, but at the same time, it was a time when people no longer kind of accepted that that was okay. So yeah. So us shoutcasters banded together, and really we were trying to figure out where is the point of compromise with game publishers, with us as talents, as professional talents. Number one, you had to professionalize it, but at the same time, to be able to propose that, you need to also know your value, what you're offering, how you will operate, and at the same time, what is the corresponding value of that to be able to render your service. So you have to fight for that. And that's something that is not automatic. It may seem automatic from the Western point of view, because they've already gone quite far. But for here, it was like, okay, there's a lot of people who want to do this. We can just pluck someone else who's a great fanboy or fangirl who can speak a little well, and then put them there. But at the same time, we were also at that point where you had shoutcasters who had enough experience and enough expertise to to fight back and say, it's not as simple as that anymore. We provide additional value, so much more, because of everything we've done, because of the passion era, that now we can say that we are worth more than this. So it was an interesting time, and for me, that was like, that should have been a turning point, actually. And for a lot of us, we really saw that things were going to get better with some friction, yes, but we kind of foresaw an upward trajectory with compensation, opportunities, all of these things in esports. So, yeah.
How about you, Marco?
All right, I just want to pick up on that upward trajectory part, because the way I remember it is a little different, I guess, from the rest of the people in this podcast, because my particular expertise was at the time a much more auxiliary part of esports. No one made money writing for esports.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So the passion era was really the passion era for someone like me.
The passion era was the hungry era.
Yes.
For people
And
like
so-
us, actually, yeah.
And that's a good point, because man's got to eat. And so this leads me to another comparison. It was the passion era, but to me, it also seemed like an age of exploration for some people. Like they were trying to throw darts at a dartboard and see what stuck. Like, how does esports work in the Philippines? Let's figure it out. Because now the lines are pretty drawn. But back then, like, companies didn't really, well, not for all companies, but some companies didn't really know. Like,
You're doing a lot of things.
yeah, like, for example, my personal journey, let's just lay it out. I worked with these 3 other people long before Tier 1, but I wasn't actually there for the day one of Tier 1, because I was imported from Sports Illustrated. I was the head of esports in that company, and it had a very loose interpretation of what it wanted to do as an esports company, and that's why it sadly is no longer with us today.
You're making
that's
it
where-
sound like Sports Illustrated died.
Hashtag never forget.
Oh, don't worry. Vern and I will never forget. That's what I meant, Vern. For all you listeners, who you will see, you will hear Vern in one of these episodes sooner or later. But yeah, it's companies like that. It was like a gold rush, sort of, in esports at the time. Like,
Yeah,
it's getting big. Let's see where we can plant our flag. And
because of 2016.
yeah, and obviously not everything.
Not
still standing.
everything Yeah, not everything took hold, right?
Yes,
Actually,
exactly.
out of all your stories, what I see is that 2017 is probably the time where the passion era ended. I
I
think
think it was
because
that's the
looking at
probably the
2018,
last.
it's a totally different year for esports.
I think that's
Yeah.
probably the last. Yeah,
But
because
people need to understand though, like quick clarification. Passion era is different from actual passion. Like that just means, it was no longer enough or sustainable for us to operate on only passion.
Yeah,
And
for lack of
yeah.
careers, for lack
And
of
that doesn't
stable
have to be
careers.
a bad thing, right? Like it's actually, I would say it was a good thing.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I think that's just the thing with like whenever an industry is beginning, right? Obviously, people don't know the rates. Like no one knows what exact need you can do and how much you're supposed to be compensated for whatever. So people were trying out a lot of different hats, which is from what Aiko was saying. That's kind of what happened. There were some esports companies around 2017, at least from what I can see from the orgs that I am close with, who are trying out a lot of different things.
Hmm.
And then eventually, like now, if you look at right now, it's pretty clear. Like Tier One is a talent agency, you know. But before, it was not uncommon to find a company that does a little bit of everything. It was just a little bit of everything around esports. They would have a team, this, that. So,
And I think that was
um,
kind of like our advantage, like trying to look back in 2017. I remember doing Manila Major in 2016, and I was like, I didn't want to be in events. I wanted to find a position in the esports ecosystem where we can drive the industry for it to become bigger. And I felt that talent management was the position to be in, so that we can help out more events organizers, more publications, maybe send them
Hmm.
talents to get them more, to help them get more traction, maybe send talents to events so that they can get more event attendees. And like that was the principle of why we wanted to be in talent management. And looking back in 2017 and what we've done for the past 3 years, can you say that that was kind of like the right move, like for us to be in talent management? Would things would things be totally different if we did something else, even with the same team?
I think we touched on it a little bit from last time, but from a different angle, you can see that I think it was generally was the right move for us to do, right? Because
Hmm.
it's not like we can tell what the future will be. It's kind of the future is something that you make in the present. But we were fortunate enough to be a company in the time when Twitch entered the Philippines, a lot of other streaming platforms entered the Philippines, and then Facebook sort of became the de facto gaming and content creation platform in the Philippines. So
I remember
when
Tamago, Nemo, like a lot of other
yeah,
platforms
yeah,
came in.
a lot of other platforms come in, and that when we were,
Wait a second, guys. That was not in 2017 anymore.
well, yeah, but
Yeah.
that was the start though. Like
Uh-huh.
2017 was the start when Twitch came in, or Twitch was in around 2016, but Twitch in 2017 was when it was biggest, when it was paying the most. It captured a lot of the content creators.
So the height of it.
Although
was the height of it, yeah.
if you guys remember, that's the kind of interesting, and I would say like 2017 was a bit of a crossroads for the whole industry, because if we talk about early 2017, everyone was still riding the esports high, and it kind of looked like teams were the best way to go. PC gaming was at its peak. And all these things, right? Like, okay, streamers are a new thing on Twitch, but that was not yet fully fleshed out until the end of 2017. End of 2017 was when we really decided, or when things really changed for us. And throughout that whole year was when we kind of figured out that, okay, teams may not be the
Yeah.
right move.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it.
Can you share your perspective on that, Pao? Like, because I remember like we mentioned this on the last episode that
Right.
you didn't really recommend us to have teams back in 2017. So why, and what was the landscape like?
Right. So, like we said in the first episode, I was one of the people, which is really still ironic to this day because I'm the guy heading all of our esports teams, right? But back in 2017, around this time, and you know what? Let's just contextualize all of 2016 too. The esports high that Aika has been referring to was really because in 2016 we had a bunch of big ticket events in Mall of Asia Arena.
Manila Major,
Right.
Manila Masters, ESL 1.
ESL 1, right. So this was
Mhm.
around 2016, 2017.
Wasn't Manila Masters in 2017?
Yeah, it
though?
was the next one.
early.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was ESL and then Manila Major. And then, but they were both in MOA Arena. They were covered with, local coverage, traditional media. That was our version of the Cathedral of Counter-Strike. Big stadium-looking venue filled
Mhm.
with screaming fans
With
For-
international talent.
for an esports event, right?
Yes.
So once that happened, everyone started looking into, esports is a thing in the Philippines now. It's ripe.
We're on the map.
Yeah, it was
exactly.
a very big Pinoy baiting moment where like,
Yeah.
oh, we're the best fans in the world. Look at how well we cheer.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Validation.
We cheer for everyone, right? So that was the 2016 hype. So around 2017, people, obviously a lot of people already in the industry, people who want to get into the industry are
Mhm.
looking around and they see, who was headlining these events?
Yeah.
Obviously it's the teams. Let's make a team. Everyone wanted to make a team.
Yeah, because everyone expected that it would keep going, right?
Yeah. So to me, at least from my perspective, that was the last thing I wanted to make. Like that was the last thing I wanted to do because, and my perspective on it hasn't changed because when you take a look at what happened before, you could enter. Yes, you could make a team, and all you would really need to do is five people who played video games. Except it wasn't that simple. People thought it was that simple, but you have to find the right amount of people. You need to pay them a salary. You need to pay the equipment, which is the high-end computers that they would need, a central training camp for them. So a lot of that costs a lot of money. And at the time, the advertising or the sponsorship money that went into these teams did not justify such a move, especially if you were making it from scratch. So Trike mentioned this in his look back, that now the salaries are much higher compared to before, but 2017 was the start of when the salaries were increasing, sometimes month to month, because a lot of people wanted to come in, make their teams, so they were trying to get the best players that they can, so they were all offering obscene amounts of money to get the best players that they can, and then once they have it, it turns out that they can't support that cost.
Yeah, it was a buyout.
Yeah, right. They would buy out a player. They would offer a player, hey, play for me. I'll pay you 6 figures in pesos per month. And then they would, and then they couldn't support it. And then eventually the organization that they bootstrapped from the very beginning would fall apart because of the costs of, competing in an open market at the time. So that was my perspective. That was my sort of main reason. Like the economics of putting up a team before did not make sense because there was no guarantee that you can run it with a clear business plan. I'm gonna end it with this. At the time, people wanted to make an esports team and then win the world tournament, and that was their business plan.
Yes.
Right? If your business plan was to win a tournament and then you
Yes.
get paid, I'm sorry, but you have a bad business plan. Your business plan isn't anchored on being able to earn guaranteed amounts, guaranteed revenue. Literally, it was a bigger version of if you don't win, you don't eat.
Mm.
So that was why I was against it. I didn't feel like, the sponsorship
That was a
arena.
business at all.
Yeah, it wasn't a business. It was a gamble. So
Easy. All we gotta do is
Maybe
win
that's why
everything.
it's focused
right, exactly.
on those.
Right, diba? It was like that. It was like, okay, I'm gonna make a team and I'm gonna win. Oh wow, just win games, forehead. Why didn't I think of that? Right, that's sort of the feeling that I had in 2017. So we waited. We figured out how the rest of the industry worked.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to figure out what the people who were outside the industry, how they work, how all these different ecosystems fit in with each other, and then after a lot of painful exploration, like Marco said, we figured it out. We figured out how to have an actual business, and that was when it was, time to, okay, let's now venture into teams.
Okay, so now that we're in teams, we're talking about present day, right?
Yeah.
What, I mean, pandemic aside, what does the
Oh,
industry look like now?
In terms of teams, I mean, in terms of
Yeah,
teams
and
now,
then, of
yeah.
course, everything else.
I think now in terms of teams, and I'm not just saying our teams like Blacklist International. I'm saying like across the board, more teams now understand number one where their costs are coming from, right?
Mhm.
Their costs are coming from salaries and all of these recurring monthly costs. So now they're understanding that hey, what we are in the business of isn't just winning tournaments. Obviously, if we win a tournament, we're gonna get paid the big bucks. That feels awesome. Now they understand they need to have a social media presence. They need to have, they need to have media training for the benefit of their fans. So I would say a lot of the teams that we're seeing right now, even if a lot of them are coming in new, they've learned. They've learned a lot. And again, I'm not just talking about us. It's very self-centered for us to say that we're the only people who figured it out. Of course not. So in this kind of ecosystem, it's a lot healthier because there are teams that are trying to support the livelihoods of people, not just players, but staff that work with them. And now they actually have a business plan to go with it. So I would say we're COVID-19 aside. I would say that teams now are better equipped to become actual businesses. I would say, at least in our region. Yeah, that's me.
So quickly on the topic of teams, I just kind of want to add on to that because aside from us not considering teams back in 2017, even further from that would be female teams or female players. And I'm personally, I would say I'm quite proud of where we are and the decisions we've made because we have not only teams, we're also supporting female teams, and that.
Oh yeah, they're playing in a tournament right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go girls.
Yeah.
Actually,
So
I need to watch.
For the longest time, a lot of organizations also weren't able to really kind of solve the management of female teams
Right.
or female tournaments for that matter. But so why do you think it's like? Tell me a little on why you decided in this time that it
Right.
was okay.
I mean, so right now for we have Blacklist International, and within that professional esports organization, we have the CSGO team that's a full female team. And one of the big reasons was that it was kind of an accident. Maybe we can get into this in another day, but long story short, there was a roster that qualified for the WestGC final in Malaysia, and they had an organization, but their organization dropped them after they've qualified. So they were frantically searching for an organization. Someone put them in contact with us, and literally they said, you know what, we just need someone to represent. A lot of it is already paid for by the organizer anyway, but we just need someone to take care of us. So
give us some jerseys.
give us some jerseys, actually, yeah. So at that point, I just did a short amount of research, but what really sold me on this team was when I spoke to them in person and how much they wanted to compete. And this might sound melancholy, and I was just talking about being an actual business, but really what sold me was their conviction to compete. That was what sold me. Like this is a roster. This is a roster that wanted to just play, and they didn't want to fly out and just play in their normal street clothes, because it would be, it wouldn't look nice.
And I think that's the whole beauty of like where we're at right now with tier 1, because if there's one thing that we figured out from 2017 to today, it was we actually have a business model, a working business model, because I remember in 2017 I told this to the pitch that I went to in LA. This was something that we discussed last episode, that I feel like there's gonna be a surge of teams in Southeast Asia. Like a lot of companies will invest in teams, a lot of companies will invest in publications, and then a lot of people will just invest in events because of everything that's happening and developing in esports globally. I feel like people can look at the region, and the easiest way to put up a business is to look at those three things. And thus, I wanted to create a business that supplies all of these companies that will, eventually come out. And rightfully enough, the companies did came in. Like for example, you see Sports Illustrated, you have your
Yeah,
numerous
yeah,
esports events organizers, you have
yeah.
like numerous teams, and those were all our clients. And thus in 2017, it was more of like, yes, the passion era. That's why in terms of like clients, we're trying to look at our other stakeholders as clients. But as the years develop, we're not even looking at our other stakeholders in esports as our clients now, but we're actually working with brands such as Mountain Dew, like the bigger brands, the endemic brands that we never had before. So like for me, like things really developed um differently because we did this. But what I want to point it out in relation to Pau is the beauty that we made in that the beauty of the business model that we have in tier 1 is that Pau can just focus on them winning, and then the infrastructure kind of like solves
Right.
the other
Yeah.
side of the business, which is
Yeah.
like
So
money.
yeah, that's the thing that I was referring to like a while ago. In 2017, people would be like trying out a lot of different things. So you'd have an esports organization that will have to focus on their players, but at the same time will have to pull that focus away to try and make money. Right? So sometimes, one has to give way to the other, but with figuring out the business, or at least the ecosystem of business now in 2020, a lot more, obviously us, but a lot more people are now geared to make sure that they have an operation that earns money. Because I don't know, guys, I just want everyone listening to this podcast who, if you're not inside the industry, I want you guys to understand that esports teams are a cost. They cost a lot of money, right? They're not printing money. Sometimes we get that every now and then. Oh, you work in esports, right? Oh, you have an esports team. You must have a Lamborghini. No, I don't. No, I do not. It is not. It is not as rosy or it's not as glamorous. I mean, it can be, but it's not like that. Like anything, it's a business. There are hard decisions that you have to make on a daily basis. And what we've managed to put up for tier 1 at least is that at least those decisions are easier a little bit because of the infrastructure that we have.
This is something I want to hear. Like for Marco, I remember you've been like the voice of our brand since day one. What has changed in terms of like perception before and now?
Perception, like how people see tier 1?
Yes.
Or... Oh,
Esports in
okay.
general, maybe.
I don't know about esports in general, but
For tier
tier
1.
1. Okay, that's pretty simple. In 2017, okay, let's just contextualize what everyone has said so far. 2017, getting an esports team is a gamble. You just banked everything on winning, and the key to success was having everything not rely on winning or losing. And so that's why, as people have stated, we made this business model that's like an arms dealer. Everyone's just trying to go to war, and we're just going, we'll supply you with things, and then we'll watch you win or lose. And then we just make money. Apparently, yeah, that was it. But then no one really saw the value in that in 2017. There were a lot of
Yeah.
we had a lot of detractors of because the business model that we made was unheard of at the time.
It didn't make sense to a lot of people.
Actually,
quite
sometimes it
literally.
didn't make sense to us. Let's be honest.
That is the truest statement I've heard all night. That is.
So if you were confused, if anyone's listening, it was like, what was Tier 1 doing in 2017? We figured it out. Again, it goes back to what we said in episode 1, a lot of trial and error. And eventually, mostly error. And,
We were confused on a daily basis,
and
yes.
sleepless planning, yes. And eventually, we found a workable formula. We found a way to sell our talents to brands effectively. We founded Amplify. We got more streamers under our banner. And eventually, we just had a lot of arms to deal. And now, the questionable looks have turned into more respect, and for some people, a creepy amount of adoration. I'm, maybe not on the tier 1 page. I'm just going by Trike's page, you know.
That's also true. Yeah.
Okay, for all you Trike fans who are listening to this podcast, did you know that Trike was today years old when he discovered the
Sausage. He did not understand the concept of tiny processed meat packed into a small cylindrical shape.
until today? Until today, May 5, 2020. Remember?
Right.
So in 2017, Trike didn't know Vienna sausage.
That's the real take. That's the real take. In 2017, Trike didn't understand what a Vienna sausage was. That's
Okay,
man.
so then it's like going on the whole, people didn't understand or quite literally, I would say, look down on us for the choices we made in 2017 of not going into teams. Now in 2020, to a lot of people, it seems like just the natural thing to be in the business of talents and influencers and streamers, right? Because it's changed so much from 2017. And now it's like teams have more taken like a supporting role in all this. Now
Actually,
you have
even if you look at
Yeah.
like the global companies like Fnatic, the 100 Thieves,
yes.
they're now all into talent management.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But for a lot of
Yeah.
people, it's like it's not something you just decide, oh, okay, let's do it, and it'll be a gold mine. Maybe some they're going to play catch up now, and there have been, right, like throughout the years, there have been companies that tried to play catch up and tried to also enter the space, but this kind of like the how we are now, the fact that we've survived was something that was in the making since 2017. And because we started in I would say, even if we started in 2018, we probably would have survived. Like, I wouldn't say it was the most perfect timing in 2017. I would say 2018 still would have been a good time to start. But because we started in 2017, we had an ample amount of time to fail and to figure it out.
That's true. That's true.
Because even we weren't entirely convinced yet of
Right.
what we were trying to do, right?
Yeah, especially
Or-
especially when we talk to like multiple brands. I remember like I was pitching myself to multiple clients that we can work with, and they were
Uh-huh.
like, "Esports really, talent
Also,
really."
hang on.
Like,
Point of order.
Not teams? Question
Pitching
mark.
yourself to multiple clients is not the thing you wanted to say, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Right. What is probably essentially what happened? Essentially true.
oops.
Anyway, go on.
Yeah, so I just remember like going into like the biggest agencies in Makati, like presenting the deck of tier 1, and then we say, so who do you have? So you have these people. Who
Oh,
are
yeah.
they? You know, like it was really
I don't
like
know
a
what that
long,
is.
a long description and definition and explanations of this is what we do. These are the people who are in esports and gaming, and
This is how many people follow them.
yeah, so it was really complicated compared to like I remember the last time I went into a pitch. I remember that's probably like back in 2019. We entered the room and we're like, "You're from tier 1, right?" You know, like things are so much easier now compared to before. And I think that's also one of the positives in terms of like vlogging and like all of the things that we've done in social media. Like we're probably one of the few companies in esports where we show the progress that we do in the company, the things that we do on the back end, and I think that kind of like added to where we're at right now in 2020.
That's true. I think for a lot that we're seeing right now, a lot of it is because we put ourselves out there. Because I remember anecdotally, aside from people asking like, "Oh, who is that person?" "Oh, gaming."
Is that him?
Yeah, exactly, right? Is that him? I have one one word that will probably sum up 2017 versus 2020 now.
Mm-hmm.
E-games.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So that was an ongoing
That was
problem. Yeah, because
battle.
when you would talk to people,
That was the real war.
yeah, right. You talk to people, you talk to brands, you talk to anybody who you wanted to do business with, or sometimes like even my family. We talk to them. Oh, what do you do? Oh, we play competitive video games. Oh, is that the E-games thing? Oh, stop doing that. That's betting. That's video
Oh,
arena.
no.
So it was really a culture war too. I would say like 2017 was a culture war, at least for the Southeast Asian and maybe the Philippine context, that we had to overcome because nowadays you know what e-games are, right?
Hopefully you do. If you're listening, hopefully you do.
Yeah.
So I think just to summarize, because we're already 40 minutes in, I wanted to do like last words from all of you. What do you think was the biggest factor that changed what esports was before to today? Like at least in your opinion. Like I'm sure that it's not like the only factor, but like what do you think is like one of the biggest driving factors that changed esports where it was back then and today? I'll start.
You mean in the Philippines or like?
In the Philippines and Southeast Asia,
Okay, in Southeast Asia.
I think for me, what really changed how esports is perceived is the mobile gaming industry, which I didn't anticipate is gonna be a thing back in 2017 because I remember trying to prove a point of like esports was a thing. Like I was still trying to prove that, and then I never really got it. It never really got in my head back in 2017 that there will be games like Dota 2 or games like League of Legends in mobile, and that's gonna be a thing. Like even me, like I didn't anticipate that. I didn't think that people would take that seriously, and that I didn't think that people would actually create infrastructures out of mobile games. So I feel like that's one of the biggest factors on why it really became this big because like from PC to mobile, like the demographics is just so different.
And
Yeah.
the distribution. Yeah.
Yeah, and just the barrier of entry, it's just completely different. I think for me, what I would say, at least for Southeast Asia and the Philippines, the biggest difference from 2017 to now, and what brought us to right now, is probably the when media companies started looking more into the digital realm and the digital culture, because that was when a lot of the mainstream companies started looking very seriously into hosting the esports tournaments or the esports finals and putting it on live TV. So to me, that was what really helped us sort of get on the mainstream map, because around this time, this was a time, and I think Marco touched on to this. This was a time when traditional media like print, they were all taking a backseat to the digital culture that we've experienced right now, where everyone is consuming their content on YouTube, on streaming platforms, right? And that is a space where gaming and esports is a native in. So once the media companies in 2016, 2017, 2018 started, looking around and saying, "Hey, the landscape is shifting underneath our feet. We need to adapt." Yeah. That's when they took a serious look at esports, because 2017 was the year where we were on TV5 for the finals of Dota. We started getting offers to put more content on TV. Tier 1 in particular was getting more offers to put content on TV, and that directly translated to us hosting the Galaxy Battles 2 on ABS-CBN Sports in Action in January of 2018. Right? So I think it's that. I think it's when the mainstream companies, the media companies looked around and said, "Hey, if digital is going to be the way of the future, then I want to be on the ground floor, and esports is where I want to start." So
he just went like, computer, Google, how to market to millennials.
Exactly.
It's like esports. Okay, esports.
How to gaming.
For me, I would say honestly, the biggest driver of change from 2017 to 2020 has been platforms, like social media platforms specifically. Because, like, in 2017, a large part of distribution for esports was still very much on the ground physical events or comp shops and things like that, or the organizations themselves. But then everything kind of got sped up exponentially once major social media platforms started to actually, at the very root of it, integrate esports or gaming into what they currently offered.
Like
So
Facebook
20,
gaming.
yeah, like Facebook gaming. But even before that, you had even YouTube try it as well, YouTube gaming, and it's not only that, it's not only increasing distribution, it's also shaping behavior and perception. So to a lot of people back then, the distribution was Twitch, and it was a very purist culture. Twitch at that time still didn't have IRL and things like that, and all these other alternative things. But then now you have even things like TikTok, and TikTok it's very timely, especially now in the lockdown. But because of the platform, you've somehow incepted into people the idea that you can be not only a gaming influencer but also entertaining in ways outside of gaming. So it's really like, and platforms have sped this up so much. Like, not only do creators have to learn how to entertain as a gamer, in the next 3 months they have to learn how to dance, they have to learn how to maybe
Oh, yeah.
put like
I don't know how to put proper makeup, dress
Yeah, it's a
properly.
different game, right? Your
Yes.
IG game has to be strong. Your TikTok game has to be strong.
yes, like the scope, the parameters, everything.
Oh, speaking of makeup, check out the past
Yeah.
The girls of tier one. So yeah, I would say like a large major part of this is platforms. They've pushed people to distances that they previously could not have imagined.
Yeah. Honestly, it's just the perfect storm of that. Trike mentioned mobile, and it's the buy-in from the different platforms that, for me, caused the rise of just everyone wanted to be a streamer. Which, now, as you know, we've made a very solid business out of. So that, for me, is the biggest change. The surge of content creation is a viable career.
That's
Yes.
true. Because if imagine if mobile gaming wasn't a thing, I wouldn't really feel that Facebook gaming would have the same traction as what it has now.
True.
Like Twitch
Oh,
would
yeah.
have probably still be like the
The leading
the leading
platform.
platform if it was for if we're talking about PC games and probably console games. But if mobile is what we're talking about, Facebook gaming is really like
Yeah,
the
'cause
platform
I mean,
to be.
Look at how we made decks before. We sold. We had shoutcasters. We had event hosts, and
Oh,
there can only be
yes.
so many events in a year. But
Oh, yeah.
when we transitioned to selling streamers, it was not time sensitive. You could sell that year round in any way you want.
Yeah, 24/7.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to
24/7.
see
There are
us
so many
sell an
executions
event host
also.
in 2020.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Actually, that's probably the opportunity that we have for COVID right now because everybody's at home and then people are consuming more content than before.
Online event hosting. There you go.
Ah.
That's
Oh,
where
and that's
we come
what's
back.
interesting, right? Like back then, it was shoutcasters trying their hand at streaming. Now it's the complete opposite. It's streamers
Trying to be shout
trying their hand at shoutcasting and hosting.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
This is what's happening. So interesting times.
What we're saying is the wheel turns and nothing is new.
It's the Ouroboros of
Yeah.
talent.
It'll keep going around. It'll keep going around. And while we're making jokes at it, it's actually pretty poignant when you think about it that way. There's a lot of what we've experienced so far over the years. A lot of it are still relevant at different points. Like just because you were a streamer before and you've transitioned to something else right now doesn't mean that you forget your streaming roots. Right? That's the beautiful thing about gaming. A lot of what you used to do is pretty much baked into what you're gonna do next. That's great.
Yeah. So basically, if you gotta learn how to AD carry, don't forget how to mid.
Gosh, now that we're looking at the huge leap from 2017 to 2020, I'm actually quite excited on how like 2023 is gonna look like, right? Like,
Yeah, we're gonna skip through 2020, 21, 22.
because when you slowly
Wait,
go
wait,
through
wait.
the years, it doesn't feel like it was major changes. But now that we're going through it in this podcast, it's kind of mind blowing.
Yeah,
See,
especially like the amount of luck and timing that kind of like happened around the world that contributed to where we're at right now. Like there's just a lot of like things that went well for us.
I think, in the words of Ernest Hemingway, it happened gradually and then suddenly. When you're in the moment, it feels like, oh, the days are long. Figure out complex problems. What are you gonna do next? And then one day you're gonna look back and say, oh, everything is different now. What happened? How did
Everything
we,
changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
how did we
Imagine
get here?
imagine what can happen from here on. Like everybody's at home right now. Everybody's
Oh, yeah.
trying to learn how to, turn their businesses into digital.
Yes,
Consumption
yes.
for digital is just so high. ABS, CBN just closed down. So like,
Yeah.
there's just a lot of things that can still happen, and probably like what's going to happen in the next months is gonna be so much accelerated compared to the regular, the regular timeline of our lives if COVID didn't happen. But since it happened, I'm sure things will change by a lot after just a few months.
In a year, yeah. Or yeah, just a few months.
And I think that's about it for this podcast. Any like last words or shout out or anything from any one of you?
I guess shout out to my team, Blacklist International, our CSGO, competing at the HSG Imba TV Pro League. They're playing a game right now against a Thai team. So, good luck and please watch, please support. Thank you. That's it
Yes.
for me.
Shout outs to whoever made Vienna sausage because you really changed Strike's life.
Shout outs to Libby.
Yeah, Libby, whoever you are, your sausages, they made an impact.
This is not sponsored, by the way. This is not sponsored by Libby's, but if you want to, we have an esports team.
Well,
Also,
That's-
Trike, you should play Legends of Runeterra, just saying.
on a side note, at least, I mean, what's fascinating about Vienna sausage is that it has pork, beef, and chicken in one.
So, taken aback by it.
It's
Package.
the trifecta.
It's great.
Well,
Oh.
there you go.
Yeah. So that's it, guys. Bye bye, and see you on the next
Bye.
episode. If you have any topics that you want us to discuss, comment it below.
Oh, and if you got here, comment Vienna
The
sausage.
sausage.
Yes.
Yeah, we did it.
Yes. All right, guys. Bye bye.
Well, bye now.
Bye.